Hi all, Deborah Roth back here for another edition to our Inner Goddess Team video series. Yay! Here we are, the Northern Hemisphere anyway, in what is known as the dead of winter. And so I've actually done a bunch of winter goddesses from around the world. Inspired, I will say, by my newly minted 7-year-old granddaughter. She turned 7 yesterday. And I think it was about 2 years ago, she asked me to put together a little book for her because she's born in the winter of winter goddesses. So this is actually one that was familiar to me vaguely because it was one of the ones that I found for her, but I have not presented her before. So I'm happy to do that. And particularly in light of the fact that this week is also a real turning point in the Celtic wheel of the year, and the earth-centered wheel of the year. Because coming up is February 2nd, which in modern mythology we know as Groundhog's Day, but in ancient goddess traditions, it was known as the Feast of Brigit, or Imbolc in Celtic spirituality, Candlemas in the Christian tradition, and it's halfway between. This week is exactly halfway between, and Imbolc, Candlemas, Feast of Brigit represents that moment between the winter solstice and the spring equinox. And so it's perfect for this particular goddess, Skadi, the Norse goddess of winter, because, and I'll explain why in a minute, she urges us to and supports us through dark times in our lives, which we all have, and urges us and supports us as we move back to the lighter days, to lighter times. And metaphorically, yes, but also this time of year, very, virtually, very ideally, this time of year, because the Imbolc, Feast of Brigit, that moment, Groundhog's Day, we know the mythology around that. I'll include the link to my article about it, and I've done Inner Goddess Team videos about Brigit in this space. But it's the moment when the sun, you're just starting to get the little glimmers that we're coming out of the deepest, darkest weeks of winter. There's just a subtle shift in the light, and it's considered to be a time of purification and possibility. The seeds are vibrating in the earth. They're not ready to sprout, but there's a little bit, tiny bit of life coming back to the earth. So that she seemed to be a perfect one to invoke this week as well, when it's happening, when the seasonal wheel is turning the way that it is right now. So Skadi, I've told you a little bit about her. She is sometimes known as the snowshoe goddess because she's often depicted hunting either on skis or snowshoes. Some people aren't so sure what's the word. Some conflict over scholars argue whether she is either on snowshoes or skis. Doesn't really matter, but she's sometimes referred to as that. And she was a giantess, so she was a female giant and lived with her father in a very rough-hewn granite castle carved into the side of a mountain, so connected with mountain tops and mountain sides. And her mythology I think speaks a lot to what we can draw from her and how we can call on her too. That is, if you've never watched my Inner Goddess Team videos before, and even if you have, sometimes I'm inspired to remind people that the reason that I bring these up is that I think these divinely feminine archetypes can be real lessons for us. These archetypes that we all carry within us, regardless of our gender, ways that we can tap into these similar characteristics and traits that are represented by these goddesses from cultures all over the world. So you'll see how and I always invite you to think about where in your life you could use this kind of energy, and to invoke that archetype from deep within you. And call her in. I've got wonderful pictures of Skadi too. Here's one. I always look for ones that aren't really sexualized. It's amazing to me how they make them all cute and young and pretty and big-breasted. And but this one inspired me to wear my blue scarf and my white for winter top. But she's often shown holding a spear with long white hair that flows freely. This is a more ancient image of her. So she's on her skis. She's with her spear because she's going to do some hunting on her skis up in the mountains. She's most comfortable in the mountains. So her story is a beautiful one, very powerful one, because she's probably one of the most independent of the Norse goddesses. She, as I said, she lived with her father, and her father, as gods do in a very patriarchal, sexist way, kidnapped, what was her name? Idun, who was the one who was the keeper of the apples of immortality, which the gods needed, the gods and goddesses needed in the Norse pantheon in order to live forever. And he kidnapped her for his own, and then she was rescued by the god Aesir. And in the rescuing of her father, whose name was Thiazi, he killed Thiazi. And the gods are all celebrating. They're in their big hall. The gods and goddesses are celebrating the fact that they have their apples of immortality back, and they have this power back. And who storms in but Skadi, who was ready to avenge her father's death, very angry, and demands recompense, demands that they give certain things to her. One of the things that they do, Odin, who's the big guy, he's one of the head ones, took Thiazi's eyes and ceremoniously cast them out into the night sky, where they became stars. And then Skadi also required somebody to make her laugh. So all of the gods, she's a very serious goddess. So all of the gods and goddesses started, doing all kinds of crazy antics, and nobody could make her laugh until Loki, who's the god of mischief, starts doing something with a goat, which doesn't make her laugh. But then he does a tug of war with the goat, with one end of the rope tied around the goat's neck and the other tied around his testicles. And they're both screaming, as you can imagine. And then Loki falls over into Skadi's lap, and she eventually chuckles. That just makes her laugh. So I thought that was kind of fun. And then the third offer that the gods and goddesses made for her was for love and marriage, and that she could choose what god she wanted to marry, but she had to only select him by the sight of his legs and his feet. So she looked at all the gods, only their feet and their legs, and saw the most beautiful, sweet-looking feet, and they reminded her of, she thought that they were attached to a god that she had a crush on, to put it in modern vernacular, who was Baldur. Instead, it turned out that they were the feet of the old sea god Njord, I think how you say it. So they figure they're going to try to work this out, and they get married, and they take turns living in each of their houses. They spend I think it's 9 months first in her father's hall, which remember is her castle, whose name was Thrymheim, that was built into the carved into the side of a mountain, and then they spent the other 9 months at Njord's seaside hall, which was called Neatun, and both of them hated the other ones. Obviously, the sea god did not want to be on top of a mountain, and Skadi missed her. She missed her mountaintop when she had to go live in the seaside lodge. So, and then it was 9 days. Didn't work out. They got a divorce, and later on, apparently, Skadi had said that she got together with Ullr, who was the god of winter, or perhaps and archery, which is what she uses for her hunting. Possibly also with Odin, who was the god of war and death, who was actually the god who threw Thiazi's eyes up and turned them into stars. So that's her story, and there's a lot that's not known of her. That the presumption is that she also controlled winter weather, and that like many of the winter gods and goddesses, that she had a temper, and yet for all of that, she clearly is appeasable and willing to compromise, and a sucker for love and romance, because she does agree to the offer of choosing a husband, and she's willing to compromise after the death of her father if they meet these criteria, if the gods and goddesses meet her requirements for avenging his death. So she clearly does not hold a grudge. She's a good one to keep in mind when you want to create a balance, and when you want to remember that there's all different sides to all stories, and that there are ways that we can move forward together without causing chaos. She clearly did not want that. She chose to really embrace the give and take that happens. Likewise, as a huntress, she also has the ability to give or spare life. So, with any of the animals that she's hunting. So that's another of her abilities. And to be able to think about the balance that she brings to that, the balance of power and justice and making things right, but being balanced about it, and not letting the fiery temple of some of the other winter gods and goddesses take over. You can also, I think, given her who she is, if you are hiking in the mountains, she's probably a lovely one to invoke for good weather, because we know how tricky that can be in the mountains, but also for just guidance and help and protection as you're hiking. So, little bit of everything with her, and as I said, I do love that she comes up in this week of Imbolc, of Groundhog's Day, because that's when we're just starting. She was in this dark place and found a way to make it through the dark and back towards the light, which is what this week is about in the Wheel of the Year. So that light-dark balance thing, I love mixing up. I don't know any Norse chants, and I don't speak the language anyway. But I did find, and it's kind of surprising, I've never done it here, one of the Sanskrit chants that I found has that I remember from my yoga days, and I haven't sung it much since then. The words, so I invite you to take these in as a prayer, and then I'll sing it for you with the Sanskrit words. Lead me from unreal to real. Lead me from darkness to light. Lead me from death to immortality. Om Shanti, 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 which of course is peace, peace for all. And the Sanskrit word, so I will sing it for you. And as always, I will put in the YouTube description the words. I think, I'm not sure whether they're phonetic or not, but I guess I just remember them. So just close your eyes and take in my offering of this chant that reminds us to move from death to immortality and from the dark to the light. Asatoma Satgamaya Tamaso Majortirgamaya Mrutyorma Mrutham Gamaya Om Shanti 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 Om. I'll sing it one more time just because it's a little complex, but I love, I can just feel the light opening up with these words. Asatoma Satgamaya Tamasoma Joytirgamaya Mrityorma Amritham Gamaya Om Shanti 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 Om. So I invite you to bring her into your heart in this just little tiny bit of lightness that's coming into our world at this time. And then if you've got any winter hiking to do, be sure to invoke Skadi as well. Thanks so much for being with me, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.